Hello and welcome to Chicanime. My name is Lauren, and today I am going to be watching Annie News, Overlord cut content. Very exciting. I think usually I might have tried to do some kind of edit today, but it's my birthday, so I'm watching Overlord Sacred Kingdom cut content from Annie News. A scene where Neia is gonna defy Ainz. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to it. I always like these videos. If you want to see more stuff like this, I do have the entire movie uncut over on Patreon. Also, all of Overlord is over there uncut. Most of it is available here on YouTube, all cut. But sometimes YouTube just like erases things or blocks them 2 years after I've watched it. So for now, all of these should be fine. All the extra videos. But I'm looking forward to this one. Let's see Neia say no.
Ever curious as to what Neia said in order to warrant such a scolding here? That's some cut content we're about to find out. This audience with Ainz was actually quite the major exclusion from the movie, and that unfortunately included a very intense moment with Neia.
Ooh.
It's a scene I really wish we got to see animated, since it goes to highlight just how much Neia actually cares about all this. It was also quite the entertaining interaction for all parties involved. This, however, was preceded by the paladins
maybe one of the things that got Ainz interested in Neia in the first place?
Experiencing the city, as well as the full reasoning behind why Momon couldn't be of service to them. It's all context that establishes the Sorcerer Kingdom from an outsider's perspective. So, if you want to see how Ainz's audience with the paladins really went, stick around as this will cover all of that. But first, this video is sponsored by Surfshark, my personal go-to VPN for online security and cheaper anime streaming. How, might you ask, does Surfshark let me watch anime for free?
Yes.
Well, aside from the region-locked shows streaming on platforms like Netflix, there's actually an official anime streaming service available right here on YouTube. All you gotta do is change your server to Singapore, head to the YouTube channel Musasia, then instantly all the latest anime like 7th Prince and Dandadan are free to watch whenever you want. They've even got completed anime compiled into a single video, so if you've ever wanted to marathon all 11 hours of Freerun at once, Surfshark—
I mean, to be fair, I don't pay for Crunchyroll right now anyway. I definitely cribbed that off my friend, so
that option available to you.
I do watch it for
just
free.
One of the many uses Surfshark provides, along with secure access to 3,200 servers across as many devices as you want. Whether
That's
it be your
pretty cool.
phone, tablet, or laptop, everywhere you go you can protect yourself from ads, trackers, and malware. Its high speeds also make streaming and gaming super easy, so you don't even have to worry about lag while using it. Plus, with a 30-day money-back guarantee, you're more than welcome to test all this out for yourself. So, whether it's to watch cheaper anime or secure yourself online more, be sure to get Surfshark at a discount using my link down in the description.
I mean, you can always check to see if it still works.
AnnieNewsVPN or code AnnieNewsVPN at checkout for 4 additional free months with your order. But anyway. Part 5. The Sorcerer King. With the delegation now finally walking the streets of Irantel, they were on their way to the finest inn the city had to offer. Everyone was fully expecting the streets to be filled with undead and demi-humans, but what they saw instead was mostly humans. The only undead were the guards or skeleton horses pulling carriages, while the demi-humans weren't quite what they were expecting either.
They were just chilling.
We saw in the movie, goblins were marching in an orderly fashion contrary to what they were known for. Osk's bodyguard could be seen in the distance, then a frog-like demi-human was standing upright. Everything seemed just like how it was in a normal country, making it hard to believe this was a place ruled by an undead.
I mean, amazing way to make you check your racism at the door. It's actually really chill here. You know, I have heard that one of the a way to sort of overcome your own prejudices is to just travel. And it's just because and you move around, you meet lots of different types of people, and you can learn, oh, well, that's not what I thought about a person from XYZ country. And you get to actually know them a little bit. You get to know people outside of your usual perspective. Traveling is so important. I wish it was more feasible. But even if you can't travel, you don't have the money for it, because trust me, I understand. there's other ways to do it too. To like go to like a community center in your city that is not a community center you usually go to, and like take a class there. You know, like there's ways to like go around even in your own area to meet different kinds of people, and you know, just again try to overcome some of your prejudices, because look, we all have them, but you know, it's the moving forward, it's the moving past them, it's the learning and growing as a person. It's very important.
No one even seemed frightened in the slightest, so it was clear the people had either gotten used to their new way of life or broadened their worldview. Either way, life here was clearly better than rule under Yaldabaoth. Now,
Yeah.
it was before Neia could take in any more of the city that Remedios would stop the group in order
Even
to
if
talk to some
Yaldabaoth is-
dwarves.
Oh, hey guys.
She needed to ask for directions since
Pageant
she
and
wasn't
crew.
sure where she was headed anymore. For the dwarves who were currently doing road maintenance,
See, if I didn't know that this was from Slime, I would be very confused.
they didn't seem to mind giving out these directions. So it was after that Gustav would offer money as a tip, and again he would be declined, just not out of fear this time. The reason was that the information they requested wasn't anything particularly important, so the dwarves
like,
didn't mind helping out free
yeah,
of charge.
there it is.
It was only after Gustav insisted that the dwarves would happily accept and become a lot more open. As for why they could take the money and not the guards, well, that's because they weren't technically people from the city either. Skeletons were the ones doing all the labor, while they were simply brought in as technical advisors. It was a different method of work from what they were typically used to, but after seeing how efficient it was, the dwarves started to see undead in a totally different light now.
I mean,
Their value
yeah,
in
it's efficient
simple
as hell.
manual labor was
This is cute. I did like the undead, the Death Knight with his little tray of orange juice. It's adorable.
far too good to overlook. This obviously went to surprise Remedios, but it was here in the Sorcerer Kingdom that undead were essential, often to the point that they were taken for granted. Since they
Okay.
don't get tired
Yeah.
and don't need to eat or sleep
You
either,
can just keep
they
working.
were the best candidates to take on the tough chores nobody else wanted. In fact, they were so convenient that many of the farmhands couldn't even fathom going back to the days of horse and oxen. For the
Yeah,
dwarves,
why
it
would you want
seemed
to?
that even their own nation was starting to adopt the idea of undead labor.
Okay.
They had mentioned they were from dwarf country and for the time being were staying locally in the demi-human quarters. It was the area where all other races aside from humans stayed. Before, it used to be the city's slum district, but after being
That
torn
non-
down and wholly reconstructed,
All made up
now
and
it
it's
served
pretty.
as a comfortable stay for everyone.
That's nice.
Well, everyone except those who used to live there.
yeah.
Obviously, these slums used to be occupied by someone, leading Remedios to think that maybe they were the ones turned into undead. The dwarves
I
could
mean,
neither confirm
She really wants it to be terrible, right? Like, because again, she is very, very much holding tight to her own hatred. And I mean, it's one of the things that's keeping her going. So she's got to hold real tight to that. She doesn't want to admit she's been wrong about anything. So it's like, well, it's got to be something terrible. And again, it's, Ainz and crew definitely have done a lot of, they've caused some damage, killed some good people, killed a lot of soldiers, they did some bad things for sure. So she's not even entirely wrong.
nor deny that, but they did hear
And
that
of course, Yaldabaoth works for him, works for Ainz, even though no one knows that. So she's again not entirely wrong here, but again, he is trying to more or less mitigate the civilian deaths, I think. Or at least he's not like going out of his way to kill everybody anyway.
undead. The dwarves could neither confirm nor deny that, but they did hear that most were dispatched to villages. You see, with a lot of abandoned villages located around the city, many fields were just given away in hopes they might be restored by them. With an untiring labor force helping with all that agriculture, it shouldn't be hard for those displaced to find a home for themselves. Well, theoretically at least. Not to mention food was incredibly affordable too. Turns
That's
out
nice.
an unpaid labor force makes for quite a low cost of living.
Imagine that.
Lastly, Remedios would ask about the skeleton horses, wanting to know if they had a name or something. The dwarves unfortunately didn't have an answer, but what they did know was that it didn't matter. You see, just because they were super strong didn't mean they were gonna hurt anybody. they were simply extremely effective at facilitating transportation.
I don't know, they're just quick.
Why then did Remedios want to know their name? Well, just like Gustav, they both had an inkling as to what they were. In fact, the moment Gustav first laid his eyes on them, he'd started to act strange ever
Yeah, because
since.
they have a fear
Both
effect,
refused
right?
to accept what they were looking at was what they thought, though, since if it truly was the undead that they were thinking of, the idea of controlling it was simply impossible.
Yeah.
To them, it was unfathomable to think that they could be tamed like this. So, rather
Yeah,
than
especially
confront
just to, like, be chilling in the middle of the street, right? Like, that would be kind of crazy.
what both subtly knew was the truth, they simply continued onward without saying anything.
Yeah, fair.
Once they
I
got-
feel like that's totally valid. It's like, you don't want to know. It's like, you know what? I think I know. I don't want to know. Sort of like how when I was in college and my mom would ask me if there was any jungle punch at the party I had been to, and I would tell her it was called jungle juice. And she wouldn't ask me any more questions about it. And I never answered the question. It made us both happy.
To the end that their rooms were secured with no problem, the horses were taken to the stables courtesy of the hotel workers, then a meeting would be held to discuss what came next. Naturally, the next course of action was to request an audience with the king, a task which only Gustav could do. The others were to meet with influential individuals
Only
and
him?
try
Why?
to find Momon. The first place to look was going to be the Adventurers Guild, but the branch located here had been on hiatus for quite some time now.
Yeah, I guess it wasn't really
Reason being
necessary,
that
huh?
all requests were currently being handled by the Sorcerer King's subordinates. That's not to say that there weren't any adventurers around, but of the ones that were, they definitely had a lot of free time on their hands.
Yeah, let's go somewhere
That
else
being
if
the
you want to do
case,
adventuring.
It was these adventurers that were the ideal candidates to recruit for them. That was a job given to the knights, while for a squire like Neia, she would typically be tasked with polishing armor and doing laundry. Gustav did float the idea of checking out the shrines, but in a place like this, he figured the shrines didn't have much pull anymore.
That was probably
Still,
true.
he did want to hear what the locals of the city had to say, but that was a route which could very well invite trouble. Say some of their paladins came across something they couldn't let stand, well, that would lead to an impasse of short-term good versus long-term good.
Yeah, they could
Like,
accidentally
is
cause
the
another
immediate
war.
injustice in front of them worth putting at risk the possibility of ending the mass injustice happening back at home?
Yeah.
I mean, sure, they could step in to resolve whatever injustice they saw taking place here in the Sorcerer Kingdom, but that would most certainly warrant heavy criticism from the Sorcerer King.
He'd be like, hey,
Enough
my
that it
country,
might
let me
lead
do
him
it.
Not to help the Holy Kingdom at all. This all stemmed from the Paladin's unshakable view of justice, one
Yep.
Neia knew her father never understood. She
Yeah, you
herself
gotta be
never
flexible
really thought much
sometimes.
about it either, but now that her home was being invaded, her father's words started to resonate more with her. She was becoming less and less confident with the way justice was upheld from a paladin standpoint. She fully
Right, because again, keeping things so black and white is, I mean, you might be just really wrong, especially when it comes to politics and like long-term gain versus short-term gain, like he was saying, like that can, ooh, it just gets complicated sometimes. And sometimes, again, you shouldn't compromise your morality, but it is also one of those things I think I mentioned in the last video, you do have to question it sometimes. Like, you have to look at new information that you're given. You have to look at how imposing your morality on other people is affecting the people around you. Like, there are things that you can do that mean you, and then you can make a decision if this is the time to compromise or not. But, like, you do have to actually take in new information and see what's actually happening.
believed talking to her mother would have dissuaded those thoughts, but with her gone, she knew she had to find the answer herself. It's the first instance of a theme that becomes more and more prominent the deeper into the story we get. For now, a couple knights would be sent to the Shrine of the Four Gods, while several others would roam the city to gather intel. Remedios would stay behind just in case she needed to be reached easily, and Neia was
Okay.
of course in charge of polishing armor. It was a job she was actually rather thankful for, since it meant she didn't have to
Relaxing.
think too hard.
Right?
She was more than
I love that
happy
kind
to
of
do
job.
something mundane for once.
I love that kind of thing. It was like, you know, because especially if she's been forced to be doing so much like scouting and thinking and looking ahead and all sorts of these like hard jobs. It's like just sit here and do something mindless for a little bit. It's one of the reasons that I like polishing and rolling silverware at work. Cause it's just you don't have to think. You can kind of just like let yourself vibe and go.
Fast forward now to when Gustav returned, and to everyone's surprise, they would have their meeting after only a day. What came after was a sequence of even more surprises, as nothing appeared as they had expected it to. First, the palace was definitely not one befitting that of a king, as when compared to the ones in Riestes or Roble, it had none of the history, solemnity, or wisme that those did. You wouldn't think that someone of such great power lived here.
Just lived in a house.
Instead, the only thing the building exuded was
mansion,
practicality, leading many of the paladins to look down on it. It wasn't as if they were making that expression evident, but for Neia, who was very perceptive, she could easily tell that there was this faint air of condescendence surrounding them. This then begged the question of why, since with all his power and the workforce Neia knew he had, she knew it would be easy for him to build something far greater than this. That being the case, Neia felt there must have been
or at least have his minions convince him to build something greater. You know that Albedo tried.
For it. It was then that we finally get to this scene here. A grand welcoming of their flag on one side, Ainz-'s on the other, then an accompaniment of music.
Cool.
This was rather significant since the fact it was their flag being flown alongside the Sorcerer Kingdoms indicated they were in fact being treated as state guests here.
Okay.
There was no longer any doubt that they were being accepted as official messengers of the Holy Kingdom, a gesture which meant Neia was now an official representative of her country. This fully went to make her happy, but at the same time made her anxious because of all the pressure. Now, enter Albedo and her introduction as Prime Minister, and for the most part, this scene was pretty much the same. What they didn't show after, though, was the message sent by Albedo not asking for their weapons here. You see, the paladins were about to be ushered in without being asked to disarm in any way whatsoever. This was highly unusual, since any king in any other country would never allow for that. It was a sign of trust for a foreign force such as this to surrender their weapons first. So, this led Remedios to ask what should be done, garnering a fairly dismissive message of nothing.
She's like, I don't care. You're not going to be able to do anything with them, so...
Albedo would mention how normally she would have them be held, but in a case such as this, it wasn't necessary for some reason. It was a reason which went to make Remedios even more confused, leading to the abrupt question of why. There were multiple reasons Albedo had for it, but the main was that they weren't a threat. So, whether it was trust, safety, or straight up disrespect, the true reason would only be known to Albedo.
See, but it's also like, well, you might feel safer, but also you're not a threat, even with them. So, like, does that actually make you feel safer? We didn't have to go into this, you know? You could have just let it go. Granted, it's Remedios. No, she can't.
If the answer truly was trust, though, then Remedios wanted that to be perceived both ways. That being the case, despite it not being necessary, Remedios would have her paladins hand over their weapons anyway.
Alright, everybody but her,
I guess,
right?
All their swords except for hers would be surrendered. The whole gesture was received rather amicably, making Albedo seem like she was truly trying to be genuine with them.
Nice.
Neia wasn't sure if this was actually the case, but from what she could tell, her kindness seemed real. The only vagueness came from why she would let them...
Like, it might as well, right? Like, Albedo doesn't have a reason, like, to be cruel in this moment, so it might as well be genuine kindness.
See her master while carrying weapons. Was it an order from the Sorcerer King himself, or was it perhaps their intent to make it known that they couldn't hurt him even if they tried? Or maybe he just had that many undead guarding him. Albedo didn't seem like very much of a fighter herself, so Neia was curious as to what other undead might be standing guard next to him. This brings us now
Albedo could totally wreck their asses.
A meeting which was unfortunately fully cut from the movie. That whole outburst we know Neia made only due to the scolding from Remedios. Well, we actually get to see what it is she said in the novels.
Excellent.
So, it was after the majestic magnificence of Ainz-'s garments were taken in that the most surprising part about him was the halo of darkness ever present behind him. They don't say whether it was purely aesthetic or some form of magic, but the aura given off by him was far different than any undead Neia had ever seen before. It was so different she felt it wasn't even right to call Ainz an undead.
Okay.
Strangely enough, she didn't feel a repulsion towards what she saw either, since the skeletal face in front of her seemed almost pure. To know his strength didn't exist in a range humans could even imagine, well, that made her entranced by his transcendent nature.
So
she
was down bad immediately, huh?
Captivated that she totally forgot Albedo was standing next to him.
Ooh.
What brought her back was Ainz's commencement of the conversation, starting with the typical pleasantries, then an immediate shift into what they wanted. There were no objections when both parties agreed to speak their minds frankly. Ainz would then ask the first question, wanting to know how things were in the Holy Kingdom. He stated how if they spoke truthfully and didn't leave anything out, there was a good chance the Sorcerer Kingdom might be able to do something.
Interesting that he's
would respond with,
I will know. It also indicates that, like, a knowledge of what's going on, which one think would be a little suspicious.
Exactly what she told the Blue Roses, simply stating how they were barely holding off the invasion for now.
Okay.
She had essentially admitted their country was on the verge of collapse. This led Ainz to ask what their plan was, bringing Remedios to her request for Momon.
Okay, yeah.
Of course, this was a request Ainz was expecting, and the response he prepared for them was no. It was impossible for Momon to leave the Sorcerer Kingdom, and the reason for it was expressed to be because of the Sorcerer Kingdom's shame. Since Momon played a critical role in keeping the peace here, it was thanks to him that everyone else could live without fear. Such a reason wasn't one Remedios could really understand though, since with Ainz being the proud owner of a powerful army of undead, she felt they could keep the peace just fine without Momon. It was a comedic statement since these were paladins suggesting that undead were trustworthy. Ainz would humor it and offer his undead army instead of Momon, knowing full well just how ridiculous that was.
I love that though. It's like, okay, you want him then? I'll let you have the undead army. You really trust him? You really trust him. So it's like, it is an interesting way to like flip it on her to be like, okay, so you don't think they're trustworthy, do you? Because if you did, then you'd accept my offer for like giving the army, which means that my people, you wouldn't if you wouldn't trust your people with the undead army, why would you just throw mine under the bus? Like, that does sort of seem to be what he's doing here. Very clever.
And he did is because the reason Remedios couldn't show up in the Holy Kingdom with an army of undead was the same reason Ainz couldn't let Momon go. The people wouldn't accept it. So, as much as an undead army would prove to be effective in wiping out the demi-humans, the idea of Remedios leading them was unimaginable. The same could be said for any paladin. Sure, their innate traits did make them the ideal soldiers, but to work with the life-hating enemies they were sworn to defeat, well, that was incredibly frightening. Not to mention incredibly foolish too. It wasn't the smartest idea to bring a foreign army straight to the heart of your own.
That's also true.
Especially when that kingdom was already weakened to begin with.
And a foreign army like that can only be controlled by like a powerful necromancer also, like, terrible idea.
These were all things Ainz and his subordinates considered prior to Remedios realizing them herself, leading him to reveal the full picture. Basically, the Sorcerer Kingdom was in the middle of a transition phase. Everyone from farmers to security were learning to accept undead, but most were still early in the process of doing so. They were definitely more open now than they were when Ainz first took over, but still quite a ways away from the full acceptance he really wanted. So, it's Momon who provides relief to those still hesitant, and it's Momon who can bring that acceptance to the level Ainz is going for. Should Momon leave and the people lose their pillar of trust, then everything Ainz was working for would fall apart. His people's dissatisfaction would recede back to how it was when he first took over.
And then they start all over again? Exhausting.
That Remedios would make an interesting counteroffer, suggesting her paladins stay behind instead of Momon. With undead being the enemies of paladins, who better to announce their trust for them than those known to despise them?
That's an interesting
The idea was that if even a paladin could trust an undead, then why couldn't they? This was a proposal Ainz had actually taken some time to consider, but after some intense deliberation, the decision remained a no. Reason being that paladins from a foreign country simply weren't the right messengers.
Again, also I get it. Like, for the same reasons that, like, you can't bring a foreign army into to take care of your enemies. You can't bring like foreign army to like instill trust. They're not your paladins, you know? Maybe if it was their paladins for like their gods or whatever, it would be one thing, but these are not people from this place. It doesn't quite have the same effect. That makes sense. Still, it's a good idea. Good idea, Remedios.
They
Good
were
thought.
strangers whose words didn't carry the same weight that Momon's
Yep.
did. Momon was there defending the people when Ainz took over, yet these paladins were just a bunch of nobodies. So there was a clear distinction between the trust behind Momon and the trust behind them. It was very unlikely that anyone would believe what it was they were trying to say. In the end, such was a logic none
Especially
of the
if it would feel like they have turned their back on the thing that they're supposed to believe in, which is that the undead are bad, you know? It's like, well, it seems like these paladins are kind of wishy-washy, which again, you know, I understand goes against some of the things I've been saying about, you know, examining your biases, but it can feel, I feel like it would feel, I would look askance, you know? If so, this is their whole like vibe, it's their whole mentality, it's what they've been training for their whole lives, and then just after about a day to be like, well, it's fine actually. It's like, okay, so how much did you actually believe the other stuff you were saying, and how much are you, you know, just the level of trust would not be there.
could argue with, and it left them all in a disappointed silence. It's then Ainz would inquire about Yaldabaoth's maids and the state of the south, mainly because he was worried they might be lurking there. He was spreading the idea that it didn't make sense for Yaldabaoth to not have used such powerful pawns yet. Ainz would then shift the conversation yet again, this time asking what it is he would be rewarded with. He wanted to know what the Holy Kingdom had to offer in return for their assistance.
Why should I care?
Remedios' response was one that any paladin would say, and it was the natural answer of their country's friendship, trust, and respect. This, however, meant nothing to Ainz, and that was a sentiment he made sure to express.
Yeah.
What he was looking for was actual tangible benefits, not some useless feelings.
Yeah, what are you supposed to do with that?
Unfortunately couldn't promise anything though, since even if she did, it was highly unlikely the next Holy King would follow through on it. Should it be one of the nobles from the south, then there was even the possibility her and her paladins would get locked up.
Dang.
That's just how little respect the nobles of the south had for them. So, knowing she wouldn't be able to keep any of the promises she made here, Remedios surprisingly kept her mouth shut. It showed the true nature of her delegation was simply people of shaky standing searching for any kindness they could find. They weren't true royal ambassadors like how one might have thought. It was then that Gustav would chime in for Remedios, bringing up yet another point worth considering. It's true they may not be able to provide Ainz with any benefits themselves, but defeating Yaldabaoth was a benefit in and of itself.
I mean, I guess that would definitely carry the legend of the Sorcerer King on, right?
For he was dangerous with just himself and the maids, but now he had an entire army of demi-humans with him. That being the case, if they were to let him go again, then there was no telling how strong he'd be the next time he showed up. So, basically, Gustav was trying to pressure Ainz via the threat of Yaldabaoth.
Oh, like he might come for you next?
The value in acting now while Yaldabaoth was out in the open.
And distracted.
The logic certainly made sense, and it was even enough to make Ainz seem like he was about to agree. Right before Gustav could celebrate, though, Ainz would insist Momon was still impossible. He refused to destabilize his own domestic politics for a threat that wasn't even at his country yet.
And which might
Ainz,
never come.
However, was a gracious god, and as a sort of compromise he would offer this. If the paladins could buy enough time for the Sorcerer Kingdom to stabilize their own situation, only then would they be able to send Momon to help. Remedios did say they were able to put up a fight still, so holding off the demi-humans should be no problem for them.
Right.
That's when they would ask how long they needed to wait. A question to which Albedo would answer with years. 5 years.
5? Oh.
Everyone, including Ainz, knew
That's
that this was
really
unreasonable,
long time.
so when Gustav rebutted saying that
was
was
2.
a bit long, Ainz already knew what he was going to say next. He would order Albedo to shorten the time frame right in front of them, all for the sake of a friendly nation asking for help. He made it seem like the Sorcerer Kingdom was willing to make a huge sacrifice, Also, they could help their new friends in the Holy
Oh,
Kingdom.
okay. That's why it's
In the
2.
end, Albedo was able to reduce it down to 3 years.
3. Oh.
By cutting a few corners and risking a bit of inner turmoil, she suggested it was possible, just at the cost of their own people. Of course, 3 was far too long still, but none dared counter again out of fear Ainz may take it away. None except for Neia. This was the first scene where we got to see just how resolute she was, since the moment she stepped in to make her request, her only thought after was for Remedios to wait before executing her.
Dang,
So long
girl!
as she was able to get her question out, she didn't care what happened to her after.
Wow.
It was a petition which would surprisingly work to garner Ainz's attention.
That's what I thought at the beginning.
It was after getting permission to speak that Neia would request for Momon to be sent sooner. You'd think a request like this would be dismissed immediately, but to everyone's surprise, Ainz would actually take it into consideration. He would proceed to ask when it was she would like him to be sent, a question to which Neia would answer as soon as possible. Ainz would then ask, even if it meant causing damage to his own kingdom.
I do love this thing that he's been doing this whole time with the, the video game sort of conversation with the little face and the text box. I think that's been fun. I really appreciate it. I think it's been enjoyable to watch. I don't remember him doing it so much in other videos, but it's possible I just am forgetting and I'm saying a thing I've said before, which is, again, happens a lot. I do also like it's good strategy, right? You offer something that's way too much, knowing that it's gonna come down a little bit. That's what you do for like a job too. Like you ask for maybe a little too much money, and you know you're asking for too much money. That way you can negotiate it down a little bit. And then you end up with what you actually want. But never mind. You might as well just do shoot for the gold, right? And see what happens. Maybe they give it to you.
A rebuttal to which Neia would quickly respond, yes.
She's like, yup.
Response that Neia was ready to risk her life on. If it truly went to upset the king, then she was happy to have Remedios execute her right here on the spot. She had even closed her eyes in preparation for the blade that was surely barreling towards her.
Whoa, she thought that she was gonna kill her right in front of everybody else? That's like in front of the new king, like the king? That would be crazy. Just to during negotiations, you kill one of your subordinates? That cannot be a good look.
What came instead was Remedios begging for forgiveness, followed by Ainz's acceptance of what her request entailed. You see, for Ainz, he understood that Neia's request was only natural. If saving one's country meant harm may come to another, then doing so was just a natural course of action. He felt
because that's kind of what he's saying too. Like he's saying he's like, I did the exact same thing. I just said I'm not going to destabilize my kingdom to help yours. You're asking me to just basically do that. I mean, I'm risking the destabilization and destruction of your kingdom for the sake of mine. You can do nothing less than ask me for the same thing.
Ill will towards Neia or the request she was making. It was then Ainz would ask if Albedo could stabilize the city in 2 years, a task which she stated would be very difficult.
I was right about 2.
Even so, Ainz would order for it to be done anyway.
He would ensure about 2
his domestic affairs were taken care of, also Momon could be sent out sooner. Neia knew 2 years was still too long regardless, but to push further than this was just impossible.
Yeah.
The kindness Ainz had showed here was already too much. She refused to take advantage any further. It was in the end that Remedios would apologize once again, a gesture Ainz believed was fully unnecessary. Reason being that, to him, Neia seemed like quite the valuable subordinate. I mean, it wasn't every day a squire was bold enough to petition a king. No, that was only something someone who truly loved their country would do. It was a deep passion Neia put on full display here. Their audience with Ainz would come to an end shortly after this, bringing us to a good place to stop now. There's still plenty more cut content to talk about, but I think we might finally be getting back into smaller details rather than entire scenes. Either way, if you liked
Cool.
what you saw and want to see more,
Always do.
be sure to leave a like and subscribe. I'll be back with the next video by the end of the week. Until then though, ciao.
Ciao! Again, always fun. Always like these. Very interesting. Cause I do remember Neia, like, getting screamed at by Remedios, and it didn't really make any kind of sense to me, because, like, even in that moment, it was like, but I got him to make it, like, the timeline shortened. Like, I helped. It was helpful. Why am I getting screamed at right now? Like, it does help. The context is very important. It's very useful, and I very much appreciate him for constantly giving it to me. So anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what I should be looking at next. I mean, I'm still going to be going through a lot of this particular... We're going to be watching this for a while. But I'm also going to be doing some of the solo leveling stuff, or if, like, Zaranakiba or somebody else has some cool videos about it, go ahead, let me know. And I will get to those as well. See you soon. Bye.